Hi guys, how are you today?
Hi, Ryan.
Hi Mario, how are you?
Great, great. Thanks.
How are you enjoying this nice, windy, rainy day we have? I'm right in Easton, so I'm not too far from you.
Yeah, this weather has been unbelievable, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, everything else. We don't even have sunny days.
No, no, we'll get there. It's coming.
Yeah,
Um, I appreciate you joining me today, and I'll try to make it as quick as I can for you, so I don't take up too much of your time.
it's my pleasure. My
Thank
pleasure.
you. So I'm just going to roll right into it. You announced that you're writing your memoirs a week or two ago. Has it been? What's it been like just reflecting back on so many memories that you've had over the years?
It's actually daunting, to try to go into a lot of details early on. Um, I, but it takes someone to just prime everything out of your brain, I guess. To there's some things that I can go back to some of the books that I was part of that had been written, but that's not. Those are primarily talking about just the racing itself, So now this is going into the private life, but all of it sort of shakes up, my brain a little bit, and then I surprised myself how much I actually remember, quite honestly. And again, it's those were vivid moments because so much, it was so meaningful to be able to carry through times when there were a lot of uncertainties for me career-wise. Uh, uh, Deanne and I had a family early on. I was 21, she was 19, and um, and so we had a child immediately, almost about a year later or something, and then we had two kids, within a couple of years. So she had that to deal with, and I was traveling a lot, early on. So, but like I said, but this brings it all back, and I think at the end of the day, I have an incredible author, that is doing this for me, David Fisher, uh, and uh, and he just has a way of just really getting what I need out, we need out of me, and so it's all about putting things in perspective. But I welcome the opportunity, and quite honest, if there's any positive out of this pandemic, it's that. Otherwise, I would have never undertaken, this project. Quite honestly, um, we already devoted, many hours. So by the time we're set free, to go in the world, I think we'll have quite a bit done. And then, but it's going to take a good part of probably a year before we even start putting everything together.
Wow. When you first became or wanted to become a race car driver, um, what did your parents think of that idea? Because now you're coming from Italy. I know Italian parents.
Well, I'll concentrate on my dad. My dad actually didn't want to know. I mean, he wouldn't have approved of anything. We arrived here in Nazareth in 1955. And 2 years later, my brother Aldo and four other buddies, we started building this stock car with the idea to race it by the time we would be 21, because it was legal to race professionally only at age 21. Well, Lord and behold, we finished the car in 2 years, and it was ready to be raced in 1959, and we were only 19. And I tell this story, so many times, but we befriended through, we used to hang out my Uncle Louis gas station. He had a Sunoco station at the end of town. And we befriended this gentleman by the name of Les Young. He was the editor of the Nazareth Key in the newspaper. And so we said, Les, can you do something with the birth date on our license? So all of a sudden we're 2 years older. And so he did that, and that's how my career, Aldo's career, started at age 19, March 25th, 1959. And, fortunately, I never looked back. Aldo was not as lucky as I was, of course, but that's when it all started. And going back to your question about our parents, we didn't dare tell my dad because he would have stopped it. And the only actually defense that we had, the buffer, was the language barrier. He did not understand. Even when we started winning, which we did, actually, Aldo won the very first race that we entered, and I won the following weekend. It was in the local papers and things, and his boss at work would say, "Hey, Gigi, your kids are doing well and all that." So he had no idea what the guy was saying. So and that was the cover that we had. But my dad actually never found out that we were racing until the very last race of the season, which was in Hatfield, Pennsylvania. It was an invitational. And Aldo and I were both racing, but he was racing our car. I was racing for somebody else. And Aldo got hurt, it hurt badly, in fact, because they gave him his last rites that night at the hospital. And he was down, in a coma for several weeks. But my dad, that's how he found out that we were racing, So, and when Aldo finally woke up, he says, first thing he said, "I'm glad you were the one to face the old man." So I knew we had him back, and he was thinking straight. But anyway, so that's what it was with my dad. But it took a while for him to kind of wrap his arms around it. But he finally became a big fan, of course.
Did he just expect you to get up every day and go to a regular, normal job? And
certainly, you have to realize, Ryan, that in those periods, just even say in Italy, Aldo and I were just all in, for as far as racing is concerned. The passion started in Italy still before we came over. And, with Ferrari, Maserati, Alfa Romeo being at the forefront of Formula One, current world champion in the early 50s was Alberto Ascari, and my idol, absolute idol. And just the year before we came to the States, about a month before it came to the States, he was killed. He was killed, during a practice run in Monza. And then we were on the boat on the way over in the Conte Biancamano. It was nine-day journey. And that was during the time in the middle of June. That's when the 24-hour of Le Mans is running. And they had that huge accident where 85 people were killed when the car flew up in the grandstands. And so I get all this terrible news. So as a dad, when we talked about racing, I said, "You kids are crazy. It's just, it makes no sense." So the only thing that he knew about racing was the negative side, So he certainly did not understand why we had so much passion for it. And as a dad, he was protecting us, in his own way. But we obviously didn't see it the same way.
Yeah.
I had to pursue. I never had a plan B. I always keep saying that. God, that's a fact. It's many hurdles, and most of the time just seemed like the impossible dream to pursue. But again, I just never allowed anything to stand in the way, even my own father, and again, it all paid off because the mindset was there, and I was going to pursue it regardless. And having that faith, it's all about hard work and commitment. That's really what it was all about from my career standpoint.
Is that what you would recommend to anybody who has a dream? Is don't have that plan B, don't have a backup plan if you fail?
Well, that's a personal thing, but I get asked that by some young individuals that want to have some advice. My advice is, follow your dreams. And if you really believe, if you really have the passion for what you want to pursue, I said, just it's not always going to be a bed of roses, because anything worthwhile is always going to take the sacrifice. But if you really believe in something, it should not really even feel like a sacrifice. You're working towards something that will give you an ultimate reward. And that's the way it was with me. So I said, you must have that. You have to possess that love and passion to pursue something, to be able to have this type of commitment. And, I always say, it's very convenient to be mediocre, because you don't have to do a lot. But if you want to be a few notches above that, you work hard. And quite honestly, I think the rewards usually will be worthwhile, the effort that you put into it. That's the way I always see it. You know what? My entire life, I always look forward to going to work. How many people can say that? I love my work. I love it today, and stay with me. And how lucky, fortunate am I to have had that for me and to give me that much back, if you will.
You came right from Italy to Nazareth. So for people who don't know, Nazareth is in the Lehigh Valley. I'm actually probably 10 minutes from Mario. Unfortunately, we can't talk together because of everything going on. And you've been all across the world. You could go and live anywhere that you want, and you're still in Nazareth. Why did you choose to stay in Nazareth?
Well, we didn't choose to come to Nazareth, but I chose to stay, as you say, because when we came over, we had an uncle on my mother's side who had to, in order for us to obtain visas, um, we had to have someone here that would guarantee that we would have a place to stay at least. So basically there was a very strict quota. When my dad applied for visas, took 3 years to get the visas to come to the States, actually. My dad almost had forgotten about it. So anyway, the long and short is we came to Nazareth, and obviously we made a life here. We were just teenagers, of course. I have a sister, an older sister, and raised a family here. And my wife, Deanne, was local. She was born in Allentown, but they lived right here in Nazareth. And, I had even some pressures, to go out and then maybe live even, the Midwest or even the West, because most of the teams that I was driving for in the mid 60s were located. One was in Phoenix, and then another one later on was in LA, Long Beach. And anyway, but I always resisted that because I had other plans in my life to do some, international racing. And I didn't want to be on the West Coast to travel to Europe. This was much more convenient. But the bottom line is I'm totally happy with this being my base, my home. It will be for the rest of my life. Been fortunate that we have a beautiful place up in, I'd say the Poconos, north of the Poconos, up near Honesdale. We have a lake that I bought back in '68, and beautiful area that we spend time, summer, winter. We have a place in Florida, and a place in California. But this is my base, and I'm totally happy. My sister migrated to Florida, with her husband. Her husband was a DJ, for one of the stations right in Easton. But anyway, and my brother in 1964 went, was spending some time in the Midwest, and then all of a sudden he moved the family there. So he's become a Hoosier, in Indiana. And my son Michael in 2006, since he had a team in Indianapolis, when he became an owner, IndyCar owner, he felt that he was compelled to move there. So he moved on. But fortunately, my grandson Marco bought his house, so he's my noisy neighbor. And my daughter Barbie, she spent a lot of her time, in the early part of our professional side on the West Coast, between Arizona, and then LA, and now she's back. She's back here, and she married a wonderful, one wonderful family, the Curtos, Giuseppe Curto from Easton. They have actually the Curto Toys Factory.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And, yeah. And and we're here happy, to be in this area. I'm so fortunate to have Barbie next, so close to me, the daughter that since, my wife passed about a year and a half ago. And, it's been difficult, but to have that close family support for me has meant everything. And I have that. So, why Nazareth? Because I love it.
Awesome. Now you said your dad wasn't too thrilled when you wanted to become a race car driver because he only heard about the bad things. You were in racing, so you've seen good, you see some bad. Were you worried when your family got involved with racing as well, or proud,
Well,
or both?
Yeah, Ryan. I mean, in so many ways, it can be a double-edged sword. Like there's a lot of pride. What's more proud than to have your own offspring just follow in your footsteps? Like my two sons, for instance, and even Ronaldo, my twin brother's side. The same thing. And we all know the danger. I think it's. I don't know how you can. I explained it. You try to so many ways early on the kids when I put them in go-karts, and I said, okay, have at it, see what you like. And because sooner or later, they've been exposed to this type of environment. So you would assume that sooner or later something has got to be crawling, in their thoughts, that maybe I should do that. So you provide them with go-karts, and then they started racing. And then I tried to, I think I made it clear to them, don't think you have to pursue this later on in your life just because I'm doing it or because you might think that I want you to do it. You have to hope you want to do it yourself. And whatever you do it for yourself. And I hope I made that clear enough, but, it's, Michael immediately, he took to it. And then Jeff, Jeff was not as fortunate like my brother wasn't, for some reason, he seemed like when he drove, there was always a cloud, black cloud on top that he was at the wrong place at the wrong time. But Michael was amazing. He just, he was very fortunate like me, and like a laser, just a lot of good things were happening. His career was brilliant. And you can see as overall, when everything shakes down between my brother Aldo and myself, there are 8 of us. They're with the third generation drivers. So
Wow.
there are 4 on each side, that are involved in the sport. So as you can see, it's been our life, in probably many ways that you can possibly put it. So again, the sport has created for us, anything that we could dream about.
I love football and soccer and sports. So, you can see those guys are training and lifting weights and sprinting. But I mean, race car drivers are certainly athletes. Could you explain to us? I mean, you just don't wake up and hop in the car. I mean, you have a lot of endurance. And what else goes into the training or went into your training when you were racing?
Well, I mean, if you're talking about the physical training,
Yes.
hard to explain. A lot of people say, well, I just drove to see Auntie and Mammy there for 500 miles, and I wasn't tired at the end, So people don't realize when you have to really extract 100% of that machine. Just picture yourself leaving your driveway and just being flat on the floor, wherever you're going flat, to go to your pharmacy. Just the amount of attention you have to pay to everything and just manhandling that car. When you're in a race car, you're 10 tenths. And all you have to do is go to some of these go-kart facilities where you can go yourself and get yourself by yourself 10 laps or whatever, and start racing, and you'll see, just how much energy physically you're putting into the driving. I have a driving experience that you can go out there by yourself, and the trainer actually will communicate with you via radio. And of course, we have controls of that. But a lot of people, they're out there, they do like 5 laps or 8 laps, and they come in and they're huffing and puffing. And they said, man, I didn't realize. And they're not even going 50% of what that car is capable, So there's a misnomer about it, because our sport is a very non-participant sport. It's not that you pick up a baseball bat and go out and then start, just swinging away, or a set of golf clubs, or even basketball or whatever, in sports. Like, the football is very violent, in so many ways, as it's body contact and whatever. But but you can participate, you can have an idea. But in racing, many opportunities you have to actually get in a race car. That's what I'm saying. So the outsiders, they'll say, can't be a big deal. I've never been that tired driving a car. Even if you have a sports car, it's no big deal. But you have to. So coming down to that, I guarantee you, all the race drivers have a very strict curriculum, as far as the training, physical training, and so on and so forth. And depends how many races you do. If when I was coming through the ranks, I was doing up to 50 races a year. So did I need to be in the gym, and training between races? Hell no. I needed to rest, So again, I was exercising everything I needed to be exercising throughout. And that's pretty much what happened, in my career. But if the drivers, if they don't have a really intense schedule, then obviously they need to train in between, especially now, with this, obviously, we're all hunkered in, and the season will break out any moment. These guys are in the gym every single day, and they have to do then cardios, they do running, I know what, my grandson Marco is doing. I mean, very intense, because they don't want to be surprised all of a sudden in a race car, you fall out of the seat, So, Ryan, I mean, there've been races where, I used every ounce of what I had in my body to be able to come through and not give up, performance, because I wasn't capable physically. But I'm not big in stature, and in my physical size is not big, but I've already lost some on a 3-day weekend, especially a long distance, up to 8 pounds, and obviously in fluids. But and obviously I didn't do in my job in trying to really replenish myself beforehand, but that was the case. And to lose that much body weight in fluids, you got to do some work. You got to dig a lot of ditches, and so again, I laugh at a lot of people who say, well, race drivers are not athletes in any way. Well, you think golfers are athletes? You know what I mean? So that's the thing. We all have our thing. We all have to be proficient in something, but it's a heat factor in the race car that a lot of people don't realize. I already had some heat tapes, in my cockpit, just to show some of the press, what the temperatures are inside the wall of a race car in the cockpit. And I've shown as much as 220 degrees in certain parts where it's close to the legs and so on and so forth, on the sides, where it's close to the back of the engine. But the average is about 150, 160, wow. So again, you're in a very hot environment, and yet you have to endure for, whatever it is, 1.5, 2 hours, there are no breaks basically, you can't go on the sideline and rest, so again, it's a wonderful sport, and it's challenging in so many ways. And then there's the mental side, because of the speed, the speed of effect is such that you cannot afford to relax mentally, because the slightest mistake, is obviously pronounced because of the speed. So small mistake is a big mistake, and that can be very costly in every way. So you got the mental aspect of it that you better pay attention to. So again, well, that's the challenge. That's a challenge that we all embrace.
So physically it's very tough, and mentally you're all keyed up at the race. How long after the race is over does it take you to recover, both mentally and
Well,
physically?
yeah, Ryan, that depends. It depends on a lot of things. Depends on the ambient temperature of the day. It depends how hard of a race was. It depends how good or how bad your car handled. There are times when you have to really, really, when the car is not working, as balanced as you like it to be, you almost feel like you have to carry it. You're really much more, you're not as relaxed, if you will, and you're on top of it. You're wasting a lot of energy. So a lot depends. There's some races where, good races where I won, like flag to flag, where I felt pretty good, at the end, because everything was working for me. And so they're all different, but you have to prepare for the worst every time. And again, some are better than others, for sure. Like anyone will always tell you in any sport. But again, you just better prepare for the worst, because the worst thing I would ever have in my life, to look at myself the day after a race in the mirror and say, you know what, you fell out of the seat. You probably could have done better if you were in better shape. I never wanted to face that day. And that's a matter of pride, because I would be the only one to know, no one else. I could use any excuse, but I would be the only one to know the truth. And again, I never wanted to face that face the next day, because I would have slapped it. I would have broken the mirror.
I have one more question for you, and I really appreciate your time. Definitely. If we didn't have this, the coronavirus, and we all weren't locked in our houses, what is the perfect day for you after you wake up?
Well, I look forward to activity, things, opportunities that I have, and the commitments that I have. Besides having businesses that we have, disabled people, dealing with and controlling, I have commitments with different companies, and I do a lot of travel, and promotions and so forth. That's really what my life is these days. And of course, I am I follow all the races. I go to the races, almost all of them. The IndyCar races, I go some one race. The IndyCar races, I drive now. I drive the two-seater race car, and it's a Honda program that I've been involved with for a long time. And all these things just, keep me flat out, and that's the way I like it. I don't think people say you're retired, or well, you're going to retire. No, I think as soon as I retire, they better put me in the box. I'll just keep working, because that's what I enjoy. That's what I love.
Nice. I appreciate it, Mario.
My pleasure.
Hopefully we're out of this. We can get out of the house soon. That's our goal for everything.
We're ready. Chomping at the bit.
I appreciate it. Have a great day. Again, thanks. Thank you.
My pleasure.